Custom actions versus factory actions. This week on Mail Call Mondays. Mail Call Mondays is brought to you by MDT. If you need a chassis system for your precision rifle, check out MDTTac.com. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Welcome to another Mail Call Mondays, and this Monday our question comes from Bacillus, and Bacillus asks, "Hey John, I got a quick question for you. I'm using a Remington setup for the past 3 years and I'm very satisfied. My action is a factory untrued Remington. My action seems to be okay. I think that a custom action or a trued action will not add that much to my application," which is PRS matches. "Since you have used both factory and custom actions on a Remington setup, have you seen an advantage besides aesthetics and gadgets? Thank you in advance. In a nutshell, I think 99% of the accuracy is barrel ammo and shooter and only 1% in the action. Any thoughts?" Well, Bacillus, really, I have seen, yes, that most of the accuracy comes from the quality of the barrel and how the chamber is cut. And then, of course, your ammunition selection, bullet selection, load workup, and all that stuff adds into it. But if we are just talking about the rifle equipment itself, then most of your accuracy is in the barrel. You can have the world's greatest action and put on a very poorly rifled or very poorly lapped or very poorly chambered barrel, and it's not going to shoot well at all. Now, the flip side of that, though, is you can have a very, very nice barrel, and if you have a really loose, sloppy action that is not headspaced correctly, that does not lock up consistently, then you can also have problems there. But since we are talking about modern machining, and we are talking about a modern factory action, then modern factory actions really can work very well. Now, we'll talk about the Remington 700 specifically. The 700 factory actions, the tolerances seem to waver a little bit. When you start to get into the actions and you actually use them a bit, if it has not been trued, it hasn't been worked over by a gunsmith, then after a little while you can pull the bolt out and you can actually see the back of the bolt lugs, that one lug will have more engagement than the other. One lug may have all of the engagement and the other lug may have hardly any engagement at all. And you can see that by the wear patterns on the back of the bolt lugs where they lock down against the action. This means that when that round fires, that bolt face may flex a little bit. You're also not getting the full strength of the action since both lugs are not grabbing a hold. And then that also translates into the bolt face itself. The bolt face may not be true, so when that round fires, if there is any slop at all in there, then it may allow that round to move a little bit in the chamber. And you may not get perfectly consistent engagement of the bullet into the rifling every single time. It may jump and it may come off canted just a little bit to one side or the other. So there are a lot of little tiny factors in how the action is put together that can cause a little bit of variances there. When we go into a custom action, we are going to assume that the factory has held the tolerances a lot tighter and you're going to get fairly good bolt engagement. The lugs are going to engage evenly. When we get into actions like the ultimatum deadline here, now we get into more lugs. So the deadline has 3 lugs. And then we also get into the lugs are spaced out around the bolt a little bit better. So even if we did have one that was engaging a little bit more than the other, then that force is a little bit more evenly distributed. Now with the deadline, we also have replaceable bolt faces, so you can switch calibers a little bit easier. So I could take this rifle here that is a 6.5 Creedmoor, so it has a 308 Winchester bolt face, and in an afternoon, I can pull this barrel off. I can put a 6.5 PRC or a 300 PRC barrel on it, and then put the correct Magnum bolt face back on here, put it back together and run it, and it's good to go. Other things that you run into are things like the cocking piece in here. In this setup, I am running a TriggerTech Diamond trigger. The Diamond will fit in a factory Remington 700, but there is no provision for a bolt release. So there's no bottom bolt release for the diamond triggers. If you contact Trigger Tech, they don't offer it because of the variances in tolerance in the Remington 700. They don't recommend the diamonds be used in the 700. In fact, in my competition 700 setup right now, I have one of their special triggers, and I've actually gradually had to increase the pull weight on that trigger as I have used the rifle, because the cocking piece is the tolerances in it do not allow the trigger to reliably hold at lighter weights. Now, as I increase the weight, it holds reliably. It's a safe gun. It's never had a misfire, but it does get very frustrating when you go up to the line and you're trying to run the bolt quickly and you slam the bolt closed and have the striker drop, and then you end up pressing the trigger and trying to figure out why it didn't break, and then you look down and notice that your striker has fallen and you have to lift the bolt and recock. That's happened to me in 2 different matches now, and so I'm now running that trigger heavier than I would like to run it, just simply so that it is reliable. With the more consistent dimensions on the cocking piece on the deadline, then I can run that Trigger Tech trigger at a much lighter weight and still get reliable functioning. So again, it's little things like that. Now, when you talk about gadgets, I assume you're talking about features on the action. So things like the deadline, the rail is more solidly affixed to the top of the action instead of just relying on 4 fairly light screws, 2 at the back, 2 at the front, on a factory Remington action. The deadline's scope base is not going anywhere. Then we run into things like, again, that 60-degree bolt lift. That is really nice if you're running a scope that sits lower to your bore, if you're running a large tube like we have the Nightforce F1 Attacker sitting on here. The 34mm tube is rather large. It does stick out here, and I do have a little cattail here. So being able to keep my bolt hand down here out of the way and not smack it on the cattail or grind it on the scope tube or any of that is a really, really nice feature. Then we get into other things, just like the action is a little bit overbuilt, so it is a little bit stronger, it doesn't flex quite as much, and there's a possibility that it's actually going to retain a little bit more pressure if you have a round go loose in there. Now, when we talk about the Remage setup in actions like this, the Remage setup versus a regular shouldered barrel system, there are pros and cons to both ways. I like the Remage barrel setups because you can very easily replace the barrel at home. We've talked about this quite a few times. With just hand tools and a bench vise, I can swap off this barrel, which this is an Excalibur barrel on this rifle, and I can swap in whatever pre-fit barrel I really want to, as long as it is cut for the correct threads. This guy actually runs a Savage thread pattern, whereas the Remington obviously runs a Remington thread pattern, so you have to get the correct thread pattern for the receiver that you're using and the corresponding barrel nut for that thread pattern. But it's very easy to get it in and get it locked down. Now, the accuracy of the barrel, when we talk about equivalent barrel quality, equivalent chambers, all this, between a shouldered standard tenon barrel versus a Remage type barrel, your headspace is set by screwing the barrel in and screwing it against the shoulder of the cartridge, and then you lock the headspace down with the barrel nut. With a standard shouldered barrel, the gunsmith cuts your headspace with the barrel already tightened into the action, so that shoulder is butting up against your recoil lug or against the front of the action, depending upon what style of action you have, and then you're cutting the headspace based on that. So ideally, with a gunsmith installed barrel running a standard shoulder, then you can get the bolt face, the face of the barrel, face of the chamber, and everything cut much closer to your bolt face, And then you rely on the final reaming to set your actual depth of your chamber and get your headspace dialed in. You can't really do that with the Remington style barrels. There has to be a little bit more gap there between the face of the barrel and your bolt face. So those are a little bit further apart, so there's the possibility that you're going to hold greater pressure with a standard gunsmith setup than you do with a Remington setup. However, my belief is that the tolerances are small enough. You would have to significantly exceed the pressure limits before you run into a case head separation or something of that nature. It's not even really a case head separation at that point. It's just blowing out an unsupported section of the chamber. And we're working with an area where the case is thickest versus the rest of the actual case itself. Now, what I want to end with in this is basically, if you've been running a Remington setup for 3 years, a factory action for that long, you are satisfied with the accuracy from a PRS standpoint, then keep running it. There's really no reason to do anything differently. I would not bother with taking that out and having anything done to that action. Now, over time, if you start to develop problems, that will be the time to go resolve that or decide to switch to a different action. Now, the flip side of that is if you get tired of the 90-degree bolt throw, if you just see something out there that floats your boat, if you decide you want to step up to a custom action because you like the features or, as you said, the gadgets that it has, then go that direction. I know there are guys that got really upset with the Remington clip type extractor and didn't want to deal with it anymore, so they send those actions down the road and go with a custom action that has a little bit better extraction, a little bit better ejection mechanism. Those are just some things to consider. But if you're happy with your current action, I say stay with your current action. So that's it for this Mail Call Mondays. Again, we are prepping for SHOT Show. You guys left me a lot of good recommendations for companies to check out in the last Mail Call Mondays comment section. So please continue to do so in this comment section. Drop a comment down below if you have a company that you would like to see a video for from the 2020 SHOT Show. We will be spinning up and heading out next week. We will be on the road for Saturday and Sunday, and we will be at a couple of different range days around Vegas on Monday. So the Mail Call Mondays for this coming Monday, I haven't decided if we're going to pre-record and get one out to you by then, or if we're just going to do it live out in Vegas. So we'll see how that goes. If you got a recommendation, if you want to see a live show from Vegas, then drop the comments down below and we'll see what we can do. If not, then you guys will just get a pre-recorded Mail Call Mondays, but we'll try to get it going and not leave you without an episode while we're down there filming. One final thing, we will be really hot and heavy on our Instagram feed, and we will leave a link to that down below. Usually when we go to SHOT Show, we spend a lot of time taking photos of things and upgrading or updating our Instagram feed. Now, of course, if you are a Facebook follower, then we also do mirror that content on Facebook. We also mirror it on Twitter. So if you follow us on any of the socials, you'll probably see it. But Instagram is really what we focus on when we were on the show floor, because it's very easy for me to snap some photos, put a little bit of a description up, and get that going while we are moving through the show. We got a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things going on, so we are trying to do it as efficiently as possible. So make sure you kick on over to Instagram and subscribe to us. If you do not have an Instagram account, don't worry. You can make one really quickly and really easily. You don't actually have to post anything on it, just to check out our feed and see what we're doing. So that is it. If you guys have any questions or comments over anything we've covered on this Mail Call Mondays, drop it in the comments section down below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell icon to be notified when we release new content. As always, these videos do cost us money to produce, and things like going out and covering the SHOT Show is a very expensive situation. So if you would like to help out support the content that you know and love, then please, we would love to have you over on Patreon. Click on over there and check us out. And finally, again, The tumblers are selling really well. So if you guys want to pick up a really cool tumbler in a variety of different colors, a couple of different sizes, and help support the show, then that link, as always, is down below. And until next time, get out and shoot.